We are diving straight into the damp, pitch-black corners of Japanese folklore today. We're going to completely dissect a legend that has literally kept people wide awake staring at their ceilings for centuries. It's a raw, terrifying story about absolute power, cruel betrayal, and a thirst for vengeance so profound that it somehow transcended death itself. So turn down the lights, get comfortable, and let's explore the anatomy of a nightmare, the ghost of Okiku and the dark well that became her watery grave.
I want you to really think back for a second. Do you remember the sheer, paralyzing terror of seeing that girl in the stark white burial dress crawl out of a well, dragging herself out of your actual television screen in the 1998 movie The Ring? Just that slow, jerky, unnatural movement, the long, soaking wet black hair completely hiding her face. It's an image that basically defined modern horror for an entire generation. But what if I told you that this terrifying, iconic pop culture moment wasn't just cooked up in some 1990s screenwriter's room?
Because the truth is, Sadako's modern horror, or Samara if you're more familiar with the Western remakes, is deeply rooted in a centuries-old Japanese ghost story. It's called Banchō Sarayashiki, which roughly translates to the dish mansion at Banchō. That cursed girl in the well, her DNA was undeniably heavily inspired by the legendary ghost of a servant named Okiku. And to really understand our modern nightmare, we have to travel back hundreds of years to literally destripe or deconstruct the tragic, terrifying origins of the original myth.
So let's pull this legend apart. To understand the horror, we have to look at the raw anatomy of the original folk version. Think of these as the 5 core ingredients for a perfect ghost story. First, we have Okiku, a beautiful, incredibly dutiful servant. Second, her master, a cruel, incredibly powerful samurai named Ayoya. Third, a set of 10 priceless, irreplaceable family plates. Fourth, a deep, dark stone well. And finally, a brutal murder. Together, these elements set the stage for a deeply tragic story about twisted power imbalances and the ultimate betrayal.
The real horror here begins with a meticulously planned, incredibly cruel trap. See, Aoyama is completely obsessed with Okiku, but she continually, bravely rejects his advances. Frustrated, arrogant, and used to getting what he wants, he decides to force her hand. He intentionally hides one of those 10 precious plates she's strictly responsible for. Now, in this era, the punishment for losing such a family treasure is death. Aoyama corners the terrified Okiku and tells her, "Look, I'll forgive you, I'll cover up the loss, but only if you agree to become my lover." Yet, even staring death in the face, she refuses him. Enraged by her defiance, Aoyama snaps. He subjects her to horrific torture, strikes her down with his sword, and casts her broken body into the freezing, pitch-black depths of that well. And honestly, this tale perfectly encapsulates the very real, historical anxieties of the time regarding the absolute, unchecked power the samurai class held over their servants' lives.
But here is where the story shifts. Okiku doesn't just die and remain a powerless, victimized servant. Oh no, she transforms into an absolute, unstoppable force of nature. Upon her murder, she doesn't find peace. She becomes an onryo. Now, in Japanese folklore, an onryo is a vengeful spirit. Their anger and their grudge, born from deep, profound injustice, are so intense that they are physically incapable of passing on to the afterlife. Instead, they bleed back into the physical world, bringing sickness, madness, and just terrifying wrath upon the people who wronged them. Okiku goes from having zero power in life to wielding inescapable supernatural justice in death. And how exactly does this onryo enact her revenge? Through a sound that would slowly, methodically drive a man insane. Every single night, creeping up from the depths of that dark well, Oyama would hear a slow, mournful, weeping voice. 1 plate, 2 plates, 3 plates. The voice would painstakingly count all the way up to 9, and then a pause. Realizing the 10th plate was still missing, the ghost of Okiku would let out a blood-curdling, unearthly shriek of pure despair and rage. Just imagine hearing that echoing through the quiet halls of your home, night after night in the pitch black. This nightly auditory torture is completely unrelenting. It literally drives Aoyama out of his mind. He is stripped of his sleep, his sanity, and any shred of his dignity. The haunting is so severe that it only ends when outside intervention steps in. In the traditional folklore, a brave neighbor, or maybe a priest or monk, is called in to help. They wait in the dark as Okiku counts to 9 from the bottom of the well, drawing in her breath to unleash that terrifying scream. The exorcist steps forward and loudly shouts, 10.
Hearing the number 10, the ghost is essentially tricked into believing the precious plate has finally been found. Relieved, the spirit of Okiku dissipates, finally able to rest in peace.
But listen, this isn't just some spooky campfire story told to scare kids into behaving. It's a deeply, rigorously studied cultural phenomenon. Major academic bodies like Edizione Ca' Foscari have dedicated serious research to the legend of Okiku because it didn't just stay put, it mutated. It spread across different regions, different time periods, and entirely different artistic mediums. Today, it's considered one of the 4 best-known Japanese ghost stories, right up there with heavy hitters like Yutsuya Kaidan. It serves as this fascinating, dark mirror reflecting Japanese society's constantly shifting values and fears. And this cultural mutation? It's incredibly well documented. There's this brilliant academic research by Matilde Mastrangelo focusing on the intertextuality of the Sarayashiki legend. What that basically means is that the story of the dish mansion permeated absolutely every layer of Japanese storytelling. It was incredibly fluid. The core anchors, the well, the girl, the missing item, those remained. But authors and storytellers constantly ripped up the prologue and the epilogue, rewriting them to fit their specific audiences and layering entirely new complex meanings onto Okiku's ghost over hundreds of years.
You can really see the incredible, relentless staying power of this myth when we track it across a timeline. Way back in 1741, it makes its theatrical debut as a bunraku, that's traditional Japanese puppet theater. By 1758, it adapts into kodan, which is historical oral storytelling. Then, boom, it explodes onto the extravagant kabuki theater stage in 1824. Fast forward to the 20th century, and it reinvents itself as a modern psychological play in 1916. And of course, in 1998, it literally becomes the foundational blueprint for modern J-horror with Ringu. Okiku evolved from a wooden puppet on a stage to a cursed VHS tape in a VCR. That is some serious survival instinct.
Now, when we contrast these different adaptations side by side, we can see exactly how the culture's tastes were shifting. Take the original folk version we just talked about. It is raw and it is brutally straightforward. It's a dark commentary on a man using his high social status to sexually harass, blackmail, and murder a completely helpless lower-class woman. But if we look at author Okamoto Kito's 1916 version, by the early 20th century, audiences were craving something a bit different. They swapped out the raw, violent brutality for deep, tragic romance and intense psychological complexity.
In this 1916 psychological twist, the dynamic completely flips. Okiku and Aoyama are actually deeply, passionately in love. But Aoyama is offered a highly advantageous arranged marriage by his aunt. Okiku is absolutely terrified of losing him. So she doesn't just accidentally lose the plate, she intentionally smashes it. She creates a deadly test. She wants to see if he loves her enough to forgive a crime that is literally punishable by death. And amazingly, at first, Aoyama does forgive her. He passes the test. But when Okiku joyfully confesses that she broke it on purpose just to manipulate him, something inside Aoyama completely snaps. He is so deeply insulted and enraged by her deception that he kills her in a fit of passion, throws her down the well, and then, later, staring at her calm, ghostly face, he commits seppuku, ritual suicide, just so he can join her in death. It's an entirely different, incredibly messed up flavor of horror.
But hey, the story didn't just get romantic. Sometimes it got weird and honestly kind of hilarious. In some oral kodan versions, the cruelty gets amped up. Instead of a plate going missing, Okiku's actual finger is cut off, and her ghost is down there counting her missing digits. Yikes. But then you have rakugo, which is a traditional form of comedic storytelling, and they just completely flip the script. In their version, the haunted well doesn't scare anyone away. It actually becomes a literal booming tourist trap. The storytellers describe these massive crowds gathering outside the mansion, with opportunistic vendors setting up little stalls, selling bento boxes and drinks to people who are just hanging around waiting for the ghost to pop out and start counting. It is a brilliantly funny, dark take on a myth that usually terrifies people. Okay, so we've seen how Okiku dominated puppet shows, kabuki stages, and even comedy routines. But I want to shift gears right now, because what if the legend of Okiku wasn't just safely confined to the theater stage or the pages of an old book? What if that specific dark energy actually manifested in the real world? Take a deep breath, because we are about to look at a highly unsettling true story from the 20th century that carries the exact same name, and it is pure nightmare fuel. The year is 1932, where in the city of Sapporo, Japan, a 17-year-old boy is desperate to bring just a little bit of joy to his little sister Kikuko, who is tragically terminally ill. He buys her this beautiful traditional Japanese doll. It has a classic sharp bob haircut and these deeply piercing eyes.
little Kikuko instantly falls in love with it. As her health rapidly, painfully declines, she clings to this doll day and night, finding her only comfort in it. And she names the doll Okiku.
And here is where the story takes a deeply horrifying turn. In 1933, young Kikuko tragically passes away. She dies literally holding the Okiku doll in her arms. Her completely heartbroken family cremates her, and they place her ashes in a small home shrine. And right beside the urn, they place the doll, so the two can be together in death. But a few months later, the family notices something impossible. The doll's hair, which was originally cut in that very crisp, short, shoulder-length bob, was inexplicably beginning to grow. It grew longer and longer, and it looked distinctly, horrifyingly, like real human hair. The family came to a chilling realization. The restless soul of their little girl hadn't moved on at all. It was trapped inside the empty vessel of the doll. During World War II, the family was forced to relocate and they couldn't take it with them. So they entrusted this haunted doll to the monks at the Monenji Temple in Hokkaido. And you guys, that is exactly where the Okiku doll resides to this very day. The monks at the temple have just sort of accepted the doll's bizarre condition, and they actually perform a regular, solemn ritual to trim its ever-growing hair, which, by the way, reportedly grows down past its waist if they leave it alone. Thousands of tourists visit this temple every single year just to see it, and some of those visitors swear that if you look closely enough into the doll's face, you can actually see its eyes glistening with real wet tears.
Let's pull this back to the big picture for a second and really look at the visual evolution of terror here. Think about the traditional historical depiction of the Yūrei, the Japanese ghost. Because of strict burial traditions, they are always depicted in stark white burial shrouds, with long, unkempt black hair specifically meant to obscure the face and strip away their living humanity. Now look at how that exact terrifying aesthetic was perfectly weaponized for modern J-horror. Sadako's iconic look in The Ring, it's not a modern invention at all. It is a direct, deliberate, visual copy of the Yūrei tradition that birthed the legend of Okiku centuries ago. So the absolute most crucial takeaway from this entire explainer is understanding how Okiku's folklore literally built Sadako from the ground up. The DNA is perfectly, flawlessly preserved. We have the dark, inescapable well serving as both the site of a brutal murder and the terrifying portal back to the living world. We have the female spirit consumed by an unyielding thirst for vengeance. We have the iconic white dress and the obscured face, and brilliantly, we have the deadly countdown. Okiku tortured her victim by slowly counting up to 9 plates. Sadako tortures her victims with a ticking countdown of 7 days. The medium changed from a porcelain plate to a VHS tape, sure, but the intense psychological torture of that countdown is exactly the same.
As one of the academic sources we looked at beautifully and terrifyingly summarizes the legend, periodically she emerges from that dark cavity to count to 9, or wanders in vain looking for the 10th plate. It's just a tragedy frozen in time, isn't it? A spirit locked in an endless loop of betrayal, desperately searching for a resolution that will never, ever come. It's the ultimate expression of an unresolved grudge, perfectly encapsulating the terrifying, unyielding concept of the onryo. Which brings us to the end of our deep dive into the anatomy of this incredible, terrifying legend. We've traced the tragic ghost of Okiku from the wooden puppet theaters of the 1700s to a weeping, hair-growing doll in Hokkaido, all the way to the cursed television screens of modern horror. It really leaves you wondering just how shockingly thin the veil between ancient folklore and our reality truly is. So I'm going to leave you with this final, unsettling thought. What exactly would you do if you woke up in the dead of night, your house completely silent? Thanks for joining me for this explainer, and sleep tight.